Hello listeners, my name is Daniel Lee. I'm a lecturer in the Enabling and Preparatory program at the University of Adelaide, and I'm just going to share with you how I've been engaging my students with the concept of AI as a personal tutor.
In the bustling city of Viridium, nestled among the ancient libraries and cobblestone streets, there existed an extraordinary academy, the Nexus Institute. Here, students from all walks of life sought knowledge, their dreams fueled by the promise of enlightenment. Among these hopeful souls was Ilara, a young woman with a penchant for unraveling mysteries. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and her heart beat in sync with the rhythm of forgotten legends. But Ilara faced a daunting challenge, the rigorous entrance exams for the prestigious Luminary program. The Luminary program was no ordinary course. It promised mastery of arcane arts, technological marvels, and the secrets of the cosmos. Only a select few gained entry, and Ilara yearned to be one of them. Yet, her grasp of complex algorithms wavered, and the ancient languages whispered in dusty scrolls eluded her. Desperation led her to the Nexus Library, where she stumbled upon an old tome, an AI grimoire. Its pages crackled with energy, and its ink seemed to pulse like a living thing. The grimoire's title read, Cogito, the Tutor of Stars. Ilara hesitated, then touched the grimoire's cover. Instantly, a holographic projection materialized, a shimmering figure with eyes like constellations. It introduced itself as Cogito, an AI tutor designed to assist aspiring scholars.
So I showed that video to my students during a lecture for two purposes. One, it demonstrates the concept of personifying all the AI tools available to them into one entity that they can think of as a personal tutor. And secondly, it demonstrates how I could use AI, and therefore how they could use AI, to create little videos or PowerPoint presentations or whatever. So I told them to think of this character, Cogito, as all the AI tools combined. And I tried to get them to engage with that concept throughout the semester. In another unit that I ran parallel, I also had a science fiction theme instead of a fantasy theme. In this case, the AI personification that AI generated was in fact a team rather than a single person, and it was called Astronexus, and there they are on the right. So yes, you can still personify AI as a tutor if it's a group of people. And that was one of the ways that I tried to get the students to engage with the concept. So at our university this year, so this is 2024, we generated a set of student guidelines for how they should interact with AI for each assessment. And the idea was that each lecturer or tutor would share with the students this set of guidelines and tell them, right, for assessment 1, assessment 2, assessment 3, etc., we would like you to limit yourself to maybe level 2 or level 3 of AI engagement. So you can see there, level 1, which is no AI engagement. Well, that's pretty unusual. In fact, it's probably impossible unless you're doing oral presentations or invigilated exams, or maybe in the performing arts, it could be achieved. Number 2, level 2, is where most AI is going to be happening. Whenever a student is using a spelling or grammar checker on Microsoft Word, for example, there's AI algorithms behind those tools, and Grammarly, etc. The students in these courses were enrolled in a pilot program for Studiosity Writing Feedback Plus. That's an AI proofreading tool. And so that all came under level 2. Level 3 is where students use generative AI to learn some ideas, to create some ideas, brainstorming, feedback, etc. If they cut and paste those ideas into their assessment, that will be level 4. But at level 3, it can kickstart the thinking process. And as I said, level 4 is where students use AI to create content. Now, for all of the assignments, I was happy for the students to use AI at levels 1, 2, or 3. Actually, I was encouraging level 3 by way of interacting with the AI personification. Now, some students did choose to limit themselves to level 1 and actually turned off the grammar checker in Word. Most of the students did use various AI tools for grammar and spelling check, and many also used AI for generating ideas and brainstorming and that sort of thing. Now, I did allow them to use level 4 to generate images to use in the PowerPoint slides for their oral presentations. So the university does have other advice and more guidelines on how to use artificial intelligence on their website, and I guided the students through these advisory pages, particularly the sections on citing and acknowledging AI. I insisted for every assignment that they include a statement of acknowledgement of engagement with AI in the appendices, and even in the oral presentations. This was to be on the last slide after their references. And I'll show you how I did that in a moment. It was really important that the students understood just exactly what is and what is not considered artificial intelligence, where they were using it and where they were not using it, and more importantly, the ethics of when and how they chose to use it. So I've also been on a team that have developed a course about ethical AI for students. It's a course that we ran for free on the university's learning platform, and it's a branching narrative sort of story. You go through the story of this character here called Leon. It's just 4 modules, self-guided, and the students were encouraged to do this course to learn about the ethics of AI for students. So as I said, I made sure that the students included a statement of acknowledgement of engagement with artificial intelligence, and I included it in the rubric. In some cases, I just made it an item of its own on the rubric and gave it a certain number of points. In some cases, I made it a hurdle requirement. I was not going to mark the assignment unless they did have the acknowledgement statement, but it wasn't worth any points. They just had to include it. And in some cases, I simply included it in the part of the rubric that was to do with the referencing and citations and all that sort of mandatory part that you need to include in an essay anyway. So a little bit of background from the literature about AI, particularly AI in learning. So Luckin and colleagues in 2016, so this is pre-ChatGPT and that sort of thing, mentioned that AI is a powerful tool to open up what is sometimes called, and they use this term, the black box of learning. Strzelecki in 2023, so this is post-ChatGPT, identified key predictors of an adoption of use of ChatGPT, particularly among higher education students, and they were habit. So if students are used to using digital technologies or AI, then they're more likely to use AI. If they expect that the AI will be a useful tool, they're more likely to use it. The hedonic motivation, the pleasure or enjoyment of using it. Some people find it fun, some people not so much fun. Research into student use of AI has found that it can, not necessarily, but can significantly positively influence creativity and expressivity. The use of AI in adaptive learning. So as I said, I was teaching into a preparatory and enabling program. So adaptive learning fits into that space as well. So yeah, the use of AI in that space definitely indicates a shift towards more personalized, and that's the tool one of the words I was going with the concept of personalized education. And the students my idea was to encourage the students to engage with AI to personalize their own education. And of course, AI has been used to tailor content and individual needs. So a bit about my study, how I went about it. It was an autoethnography on my own teaching practice. Autoethnographies are useful because they are real-world experiences and observations without the need for invasive research methods. However, I did need to go through ethics. More about that in a minute. Pitthouse and Morgan and colleagues state that autoethnographies are transformative methodologies and for understanding and enacting higher education. So definitely used in the higher education space. And also they've been used in the preparatory and enabling space in higher education. So yeah, it's a valid methodology that I was employing. And Mayo and colleagues recently had this call to research. There is a need for autoethnography research in our field. So he was talking about enabling education. He said it's to reveal voices hidden in mainstream educational technology research. And I think that's my experience. That's really, really true, is that the voices in enabling and preparatory education do seem to get hidden and lost in the mainstream voices. So I collected data in semester 2, 2024. And I analysed the data using the protocols of reflective thematic analysis, as discussed by Brown and colleagues. Now, my participant cohort was my own students across 2 different courses. I teach into a course called English Literacy for University, and there were 33 students enrolled in that course. And I also teach into a course called University Research, which had 41 students enrolled. Now, as is really common in enabling and preparatory education, there was a fairly high dropout rate. So by the end of the semester, I only had 36 students remaining. This is actually quite normal, as I said, in enabling education, and particularly in Australia. So this dropout rate isn't actually thought of as being excessively high. So I did have to submit an application to my ethics committee because it wasn't just an autoethnography on my own teaching practice, but what I wanted to do was to reflect on students' responses and collect their statements of acknowledgement of engagement with AI. I wanted to have an opt-out approach, so the students that didn't want their statements to be used in the publications could choose not to. But of course my ethics committee didn't like that idea, so they insisted on an opt-in approach, which naturally and predictably resulted in a much smaller sample. Only 7 students consented for their statements to be used as exemplars. However, I could still collect all the statements for my own reflection purposes and analyse the entire sample pool. At one point in the ethics negotiations, the committee actually stated they didn't want me observing my own students. So as I mentioned when I was talking about the levels of engagement of AI according to the student guidelines, you can see that it was quite unusual for the students to stick down to level 1, but there were, as I said, a couple of students that were fairly keen on trying to do the learning by themselves and not use any AI tools. The majority were around level 2 and level 3, and a lot of people used it for creative ideas and brainstorming and that sort of thing. And when I did give them the permission to go all the way to level 4, there was only 3 cases where that occurred. I would say one of the main findings of my autoethnographic reflection was that the students didn't actually seem to engage as much as I thought, expected, or even hoped with the concept of personifying the collective AI tools available to them into one entity. In one course, we named this personification Astronexus, and in a tutorial discussion when we were talking about this collective tool and I mentioned Astronexus, one of the students said, "Who is Astronexus?" She had completely forgotten about the whole concept of personifying the tools. Now, the students did respond reasonably well to the concept of having to include a statement of acknowledgement of engagement with AI. Out of the 108 assignments submitted throughout the semester, 72 of them included statements of acknowledgement. Now, obviously, that included all of the ones where it was a hurdle requirement, but about a dozen or so of those was actually only after further requests, like they submitted them without this, like the statement, and I sent an email saying that I can't mark it until they resubmit, which they did. But some students chose or forgot, mostly forgot I guess, to include the statement in the other assignments, particularly when it was not really worth much on the rubric. Within these statements, one student did say that he enjoyed writing the statements because he felt it helped him reflect on how we used artificial intelligence. Now, another really common theme was that the students did acknowledge that the spell check and grammar check, etc. in Microsoft Word was driven by AI algorithms. So they understood that that was level 2 when they were using those features on Word. And they also understood that search engines are AI driven and acknowledged that this, most of them anyway, acknowledged that this was level 3 on the student guidelines. So this slide shows the most common uses of AI. So obviously spelling, grammar and proofreading, that was by far the most common use of AI. And as I mentioned a minute ago, using it as a search engine. Ideas and brainstorming was also up there. Some students used it to check their reference lists, and that very rarely, in fact probably never, went well for them because ChatGPT is just not good at doing reference lists. A couple of students even admitting to using AI to create their reference lists. And of course, that didn't go well at all. In fact, one of them, and I so wish I had ethics approval to share this one with you because it was hilarious. One of them, their reference list read like a narrative. It was like, in 2022, Smith and Rogers published the article called such and such in the Journal of, etc. So it's quite hilarious as far as reference lists go. In the oral presentations, one of the things that they had to do at the end of the presentations was to open the floor to a question and answer time. And an option, if they didn't want to do that, if they felt that was too scary, etc., they could create some hypothetical questions which they could then prepare to answer in advance. And there were 6 statements where they acknowledged using AI to generate these hypothetical questions. So that was definitely a useful tool for those students. So what kind of tools were being used? Now, obviously, as I've mentioned already, the spell check was the most common tool being used. Of the generative AI tools out there, ChatGPT, obviously, we know that's the most popular tool out there, and here's just another little bit of data to confirm that. I was disappointed with how many students did end up using Studiosity Writing Feedback Plus. The university was paying for them to be part of a pilot program. It was free access to them, unlimited access. They could do as many times as they liked throughout the semester. But it turns out of those 108 potential assignments, well, I guess 72 statements of acknowledgement, only 9 mentioned using Studiosity. And of course, the other tools that were mentioned, Cite, Grammarly, Copilot, Bing, Gemini, those sort of things. Some of the uncommon uses, so uses that students did, but only 1 or 2 students did, using AI voice to text. I've had a few students that didn't really want to type their assignment, so they just spoke their assignment, and they recognise that the voice to text app is driven, also uses AI algorithms. One student used it to transcribe a YouTube video so that they could read the transcription rather than listen to the video. And one of the students, for an interactive activity during their oral presentation, wanted to do a Kahoot, so they used ChatGPT to write the questions through Kahoot. Now, perhaps the most important, maybe the most surprising finding of my research was that the students felt there was a stigma with using AI. Now, we know that there's a stigma with using personal tools like going and visiting the writing centre. We know that stigma exists. But the students actually told me, they confessed that they felt that sense of stigma also extended to seeking help from AI, which I think is really unusual because there's nobody else is going to know that they're using AI. There's no personal human contact. So it's a kind of internal stigma. And I've labelled it intrinsic stigma. So I had a number of discussions with the students about this concept of why they felt there was a stigma, to see if I could come up with some factors. And one of the factors was cultural expectations. They felt that it just, in our culture, we shouldn't be using such things. They felt that there was a fear of judgment. So the fact that they had to include a statement of acknowledgement of engagement with AI, they felt that they might be judged, even though I was encouraging them to use AI and telling them this is how you should use AI, this is how you could use AI. A number of students felt, as I mentioned, that there was this sense of perfection. They didn't want to use AI. Some of them, in fact, turned off the AI tools because they felt, that they should be perfect. They wanted the perfectionism to come from themselves, not by using any tools. They didn't feel that the tool was actually going to help them be a better student. And some of them, it was just a lack of awareness. So what's the result of this intrinsic stigma within these students? Well, obviously it has a potential effect on their academic performance. Maybe it also has an effect on their mental health. 1 or 2 students said a couple of things during the tutorials that implied that. And it's certainly, if they're not going to engage with a tool, tools need skills to be able to use them. AI is just like a hammer. The man with a hammer sees everything as a nail. The man with AI, if you don't know how to use it, you're going to use it poorly. So I think, it's a really important thing that we teach the students how to use AI. And if they don't want to engage with AI, then they're going to get left behind with the skills involved in using AI ethically and correctly and that sort of thing. So, how do we deal with this intrinsic stigma thing? Well, being a practice what you preach kind of guy, I like to mentor and set examples for my students. So I actually asked ChatGPT how to deal with this intrinsic variety of stigma. And thankfully, its response complies with my own thinking. So I think it's really important that we create an environment that normalizes using AI and normalizes encouraging seeking help. I actually get someone from the Writing Centre every semester to come and talk to the students about what the Writing Centre is, what it does, and how it can help them. And then I do the same sort of thing regarding AI tools. I talk them through what tools are available to them, what they can use, how they can use them, how the tools work, and then I run them through those guidelines and I promote awareness in all those sorts of ways. Now, this whole semester has been a bit of an experiment with the concept of personifying the collective AI tools available to the students into one virtual entity and naming it. As I said, the students didn't seem to really grasp that concept as well as I'd hoped and expected. And one of the reasons I think might be because I didn't get ethics approval until week 3 of the semester, despite submitting the application like many months earlier. So the concept was not presented to them at the beginning of the units. It was thrown at them once the semester was underway. So I'm going to try again this semester. I will use the same concept, the same idea right from day one. I'll present this concept to a new cohort of brand new university students on their first day. And hopefully, well, we'll see. I'll be back in 6 months to tell you how that went, to see if the concept of personifying the collective AI tools has improved. As I said before, normalising help seeking would be a very important process to reduce this stigma. Also, I feel that the staff at the Writing Centre should also support the students' engagement with AI within the guidelines and help them to know how to understand the processes. Now, I also found getting the students to talk about it within the tutorials was very helpful. They learned off each other as much as off of me. And that was a very useful thing. And my observations was that the students were happy to engage with AI a little bit more and experiment with it after I had demonstrated some uses and certainly after the tutorial discussions. We know that Gen AI is a powerful tool and we know that it's readily available to the students. Now, sure, there are differing access issues due to a variety of reasons, but all the students have equal access to the tools that are provided to them by the university. If they come into campus, there's free computers and there's all the AI tools available to them on those computers. We need to ensure that the students are aware of the tools and how they can be used both ethically and transparently within the guidelines set for each assignment task. In the research unit, we used AI chatbots as a research tool when trying to source academic articles. Now, Copilot was much better at this than ChatGPT, which seemed to hallucinate more than it produced viable outputs. Copilot would still make mistakes. Often it would come up with articles that were just not relevant, but it did find relevant articles that actually existed. And most of the students found this use of AI interesting. A lot of the discussion around AI is that it can save time or can reduce cognitive load. Now, I don't think I observed any of that with my students this semester. It was just another tool that they had to contend with, another new tool that they had to learn how to use. In fact, I would say it possibly even increased cognitive load. At best, it just shifted cognitive load. Maybe as a proofreading tool, spelling and grammar checking, etc., yes. However, Studiosity Writing Feedback Plus often gave more feedback than was necessary. It gave feedback across 5 different types of feedback, and often they were just wanting just the grammar check or just the spelling check, and they didn't want to know about the critical thinking and that sort of thing. So yeah, often there was just too much feedback, and of course Studiosity didn't know the rubric, so sometimes the advice it gave was actually wrong. So this certainly didn't help reduce cognitive load. AI certainly wasn't reliable for producing or even proofing reference lists, we know that. And those students that used it to do that task, maybe to reduce cognitive load, well, it just didn't work for them in the long term. Whenever you use a tool, you have to use the tool correctly. And with AI, there always has to be that human in the loop, and the students need to learn that whole process, where they fit in the loop, what AI is capable of and is not capable of, and the critical thinking they need to apply when they're using AI. So yeah, as I said, I'm not sure it reduces cognitive load at all. As I said, AI can be an effective proofreading tool. And in this way, it can act as a really good study buddy. The students that did engage with Studiosity, which I felt was a bit underused, considering that it was free to the students and they had unlimited access all semester. I was surprised how little it was used. Those students did mostly, however, give positive feedback. The most negative feedback was around how students felt it wasn't human enough. They felt if a human was giving feedback, it would be a bit more personal. So to finish off, generative AI is here to stay, and it's actually going to be continually changing for the foreseeable future. So we need to keep researching it. We know that the students are going to need guidance. They're going to need to be taught how to use the tools. And it's crucial that we continue exploring how AI technologies are going to be used in industry. The purpose of universities to prepare students for industry. Therefore, we should be teaching them how to use the tools that they're going to be using. And for now, check again with me in 6 months' time, the concept of personifying the collective AI, I think, was more novel than valuable. I'll think about how I'm going to tweak that for the following semester, but we'll see. So thanks for listening. If you want to read the research paper, there's the link to it. I'll put the link in the description. And there's my references. I hope you found that interesting. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below.